welcome to Upstage Downstage, with him, Richard Platt, seated in the upper circle.
And him, Stephen Rees, typically seated in the cheap seat.
This is the Theatre Podcast, where we discuss productions we've seen,
Things we've liked,
and may not have liked,
giving our complete unprofessional
and non-biased opinions.
So grab a brew,
Take a seat,
and let's raise that curtain.
On today's episode, we'll be discussing Lemons. Richard
That's me.
saw this production at the Harold Pinter Theatre on the 24th of January 2023. Starring Jenna Coleman and Aidan Turner, this bold and brilliant play from Sam Steiner is directed by Josie Rourke and is a tender and funny rom-com about what we say, how we say it, and what happens when we can't say anything anymore. But first, Richard's post-show opinion.
A worrying look at how modern day life could be.
So with all that said, Richard, set the scene.
Set the scene.
So Richard, here we are in the recording studio, which is my dining room at the moment. And we're going to
recording.
Yes. And we're going to be discussing lemons.
I'm glad you said
it. Well, you are, because you went to see it and I didn't. First of all, I want to ask, why couldn't they just stick with lemons?
I think the premise of it is, when you actually see the production, it's all about the use of language and the fact that it is part of, if you think in the sense of a George Orwell book or a 1984 style production, it's all those productions where it's looking at a political system controlling speech, and every word they have is vital. So the whole lemons is part of the production, where basically they have a restriction on how many words they can use per day, and they feel like they've got to use everything up. So there was a point in the production where they had to use all their lemons up, basically, because they didn't want to waste them.
Oh, okay.
But there's more to it than just that. That's not just that's the really loose base of where it comes from.
Ooh. Right. Talking about loose.
Yeah.
Set the scene.
Okay.
I'm not implying that you're loose at all.
Uh-huh. So when you walk in, when you're in the actual
auditorium,
the auditorium, let's go there.
Oh dear.
We're already starting. In the actual setup of the production, what it looked like was a projection of every item you would see in somebody's property or house. It was lit in such a way that you couldn't actually tell if this was real or not, because there was a gauze up at the back of the stage, which basically you've got a very bare stage, a carpet that was a circular carpet on stage, and it was surrounded by
circular carpet.
Yeah, it's on the floor. What would be the circle, like a big circular rug, basically.
Oh, okay.
So the whole production was done on this big circular rug. So that was the main acting space, shall we say?
So what was it? Just like a furry when we used to record?
Just a thin, short pile carpet.
Actor's mat.
Yeah.
Did it do other things as well?
No, it was just stuck down all the time. Yeah, it was stuck down all the time just to give an acting space.
Okay.
Really. But what it was surrounded by was, I would say, floor to sort of stage height bookcases, or what would look like bookcases of all items that were in somebody's house. So basically what you were seeing is a typical couple's sort of personal belongings. What it actually transpired to be, they were actually real items, but the way they'd lit it all looked like projections, because all the bookcases were lit in such a way that it hidden away. It just gave that little bit of intrigue while you were sat there trying to work it out, a little bit like a magic eye, where you were looking a bit deeper into the stage to try and work out everything. There was even car parts in there, and there was things that, like the top part of a bed, or there was little like kitchen equipment and things like that. And this was quite clever because it gave a little bit of look into the personality of the couple based on their personal belongings, I think, and that was the opening.
So do you take any symbolism from out of
yeah,
that?
I think when you got deeper into the production, you realised why they did it, because it shows that this is everything that makes up the couple, and then with the twist on the actual language breakdown and the things that started happening in the production, you realise that it's all about that, and they're surrounded by their belongings, and I think that was key.
So it wasn't like a collector, like a hoarder. It
No.
was just basically, you're saying, like if someone was to break up and they had like split their things into boxes, it's what they've collected over a time period together.
It was almost like your Haynes manual, or you'd like the diagram you'd see of like the dissecting of, like, say, a car or like a building where they'd broken it down into all the bits that make up that relationship almost, and that's all laid out
like
in
a
front of you.
blueprint.
Yeah, blueprint.
yeah.
That's where I was going with that. But yeah, so it feels like it's the blueprint for that that couple, really.
All right, okay.
Yeah. So, but actually, there were real items. They weren't just a projection. Because at first, when it played with your eyes a little bit, because the way they'd done it, because of the gauze, it put a bit of distance between the items, so you sort of couldn't work out until actually they actually were on stage that actually it was real and it was used as part of that. So,
that was interesting.
Clever. And there was just one doorway entrance into the stage, and that was the only entrance that was used for the production, really.
So was there anything else in terms of the set? What did
Yeah.
you bring anything else on?
What
to fill
actually was also hidden within these bookcases was series of LED strip lights and things that were hidden within to create rooms and spaces using the sort of joins in the bookcases. So when there was action happening at certain portions of the stage, they'd only light. When the production started, they'd only light a certain area. So say when they were in the kitchen, they'd just light the kitchen objects up, and then when they were in the bedroom, they'd light up the bedroom parts of the staging.
Yes, I'm looking at the picture you've got now, and I can see like a bedstead.
Yes, yeah.
There.
So when they were in different rooms around.
So could the actors actually go up and into that performance?
No, it was just
highlighting
the spaces. So it's quite clever in that way that it moved you around their sort of living and what they were doing just by doing things like that, and I thought that was quite clever. There were certain items on stage that could be used, so some of the lower bookcases were actually accessible. So there was a certain times when there wasn't many props used in this, but the only ones that were used were taken from certain bookcase at the bottom levels, really. So it was just cleverly done, and it was subtle, but it was actually quite a lot of stuff and quite a big set, but it was almost there for effect and view than used and utilised all the time.
I see, okay.
I've used that word.
Well, sometimes you have to.
Yes.
It's a word that's worth using. Right then, so there's a set.
Yeah.
How was the directing and the writing with this? Because this was a new play, was it?
Yeah, it was a new play, and it is very much fixed in the... If you think 1984, you think Animal Farm. It was about a political system changing something in everyday life that then restricts and controls couples, real life situations, people. So what the whole premise of this was that everybody in the country was restricted to only using 140 words a day. So, and that was including all conversations with their families, their partners, and it was a way to control how much speech, basically. So it was, you can look at control in other ways, right, through taxes or through other zones. It's all those sort of things. It's like all those ways of control. This was almost like an extreme view of how language can be controlled.
Well, it is being controlled, and it's being changed right now, isn't it? With various things.
And it was fascinating because what you saw at the opening of the production. So this goes into the writing. You saw the before and the build up to that actually happening. So you saw basically Jenna Coleman and Aidan Turner were in a relationship at the point of the opening of production, but what we saw was we went back to when they first met and how they interacted and how they became the couple they are, and then ultimately to the end of the production. So this didn't have an interval, so this production was a straight through production. It was an hour and a half with no break, and in a way I can see why they did it, because you wouldn't want to stop and start this production because of the intensity that it built up to. Almost you see them interacting normally like nothing's happening, but then almost discussing how it's going to affect them. And Jenna Coleman's character was a solicitor in the production. Bernadette, was played by Jenna Coleman, was the legal representative and lawyer. So she was involved in the court systems and also where they were bringing in the rules. And Oliver, played by Aidan Turner, he was almost your, I'd say, eco-warrior, very anti any of these rules, very affected by a rule change of this nature, and also saw the reality in what this was aiming to do, was to control speech and control language so that people couldn't actually have a say or have an input in real life almost, because what actually transpired throughout the production was that the government were free to use as many words as possible, even within their buildings and with everywhere else. What transpired is that they were allowed to use as much speech as possible because it was seen that the government were allowed to do this, but the general public couldn't. And
Well, that sounds about right, doesn't it? They're
and-
going to want
yeah.
to make speeches when they're having their cheese and wine.
yeah,
and,
of course, but
cake, aren't they?
and it was quite relevant in the sense of
Yeah.
it was topical because you could see that there's that struggle, but also what happened was Bernadette actually became part of that machine because she worked in the legal system. It was decided that the courtroom, they were allowed to use more words in the courtroom because they were either representing the government or representing somebody, but the person standing for the crime or standing for conviction wasn't allowed to use any more words, but the person who was the solicitor or the legal person was allowed to use as many words as possible. So it's really intricately written in the sense of there was disparity between an elite group
Yes.
of people and the general sheep of the nation, and I think that was what it was showing. That it also showed that when the couple were back at home after one representing somebody, when she was representing Bernadette was going out, being in the courtroom system, she still had to conform back at home with the 140 words. So even though in the courtroom, the minute those doors shut, she's still interacting with her partner, could not use more words. And it was very interesting to see the dynamic because it got to the point where they almost came up with joint words or code words where they said one word to each other. So say if they were happy or sad, they wouldn't talk about it, but they'd just say happy, they'd say sad, they'd say like individual things that talk so many more things than just by using one word. But it showed that there's a breakdown in communication almost because it tested their relationship basically.
How were these laws enforced? How could someone control how many words?
It was
or
done
characters
with
there was?
counters and things, and what you saw on stage as well. Sorry, I didn't really discuss that, but there was also, you saw every time they were getting close to their words, light streams would go out of the through the bookcases, or there'd be counters, so they knew that they were very close to the end, and they'd be, it'd be very obvious that they were running out, and then one had to stop talking, even if they were mid argument, and the other one had to carry on, to use their quota because they felt like they had to. And it is.
What were the consequences of reaching 0 words? What would happen if they went over those words?
That's where you got the punishments and ended up within the courtroom system. And
what happens then? Do you get fined?
Yeah,
Prisoned?
there was. Well, they were basically going down the route of fined and imprisoned and those premises. You sort of.
But what was the reason for monitoring people's speech? So a lot of the things that's going on now, trying to restrict people's movements, all for the sake of the climate crisis, bearing in mind the elites can travel around in private jets. So the reason to restrict these movements currently is net zero. So I'm just wondering, believe what you want about net zero if you want, but what's the reason behind lack of speech? Do we produce more gases or something every time we open our gobs? What? And what happens if air's coming out the other end? What happens then? Is it counted?
I suppose really they discussed that it was a law that was brought in, and they adhered to it in a way because of Bernadette being in the political system, the courtroom system. So it's more like an accept that they've got to do it. So maybe I suppose they didn't really explore into depth the consequences. It was just almost an accepted.
So it was just a given that this is what the situation is.
Yeah, it was more for and against. I'd say because Aidan was the activist, because of
for shutting up.
Well, it's
speech.
crazy. I think it was more what I mean is by for and against is. It was the struggle of Bernadette's character, who to have her money and have her wage living in that society in that world,
And keep
she
going
had
along with
to go. She had to go along with it because of that was her job.
Yeah.
And you've got the activists' view so it's very balanced in the way they looked at it in a way because
Yeah. So the freedom fighters wanting freedom of speech.
and was protesting against
Yeah.
the sort of the laws, and you got to see that he got distracted by friends or potential people that were, say, committed to that fight. So there was a bit of a struggle within the relationship because of that draw away from the relationship, because there was other people that believed in what he believed in.
Yeah.
So you got, even though you never saw any of these characters on stage, they were very much talk. You could see what was happening because they were discussing other things outside the space that were painting the picture of like he potentially could have gone off with somebody else.
Were there
who was a friend.
voiceovers of other artists or what?
As in, he could have been in a relationship with somebody else who believed the same way that he did.
Yeah, all these people who believed it.
Yeah.
Were their characters off stage delivering lines?
No. It's
voiceovers
just
or what?
he was talking about coming home from
Okay.
from protesting or this, that, and the other while she was at work, and even in the protest he used some of his words up. So when he got home, the quota had gone, and even though they were conforming to a point.
Did the cast just feature the Aidan?
It was just Jenna Coleman and Aidan Turner. So it was literally two-hander.
Oh, okay.
So that's why it was cleverly done, and it was quite intense because it didn't stop throughout. There was no let up really, and I think that helped because what you saw was almost the breakdown of the relationship because communication became harder and harder between the two. Because
Well, it sounds like it was more restricted.
yeah, it was more restricted, but it was almost to show the effects of what happens in this process. You know what when they were so used to interacting, talking to each other, and being part of that it came to an end really in a way. Right at the end, you saw what.
Do you think perhaps the reason was to prevent people from disagreeing with each other and to all follow the same narrative or pattern?
It was basically somebody's come up with an idea that it's the control. It's a way to restrict people having ideas or thoughts apart from the elite. So there was another way of doing that by restricting speech. Even if you had ideas, you'd always run out of characters or words to convey those ideas, but the elite could deliver any idea they wanted really, and I think that was what its ultimate aim was showing.
Yeah, very interesting.
It's got a lot of, it's quite deep. I mean, I enjoyed it because it was just a different type of theatre, and I think that sometimes it challenged. It was really watchable, and I didn't feel myself not wanting to watch it till the end, and I think that was key.
So what about the direction? Was it, with it only being two actors on stage and, well, on a rug?
Oh yeah,
basically, and
rolling around riding on a log. Well,
yeah, so how did that manage to work to keep everyone engaged?
I think they used the space really well, and the way it was directed was almost, it's like clap, off we go, we're on. It was like the lights went down, they were on stage, they just appeared on stage almost, and that was
like a
very,
puff of smoke.
Yeah, it could have been, but I think it was more the fact that it felt like it was very definite, even though there was scenes within it.
Was there a romantic scene on the rug then?
They were very much a
fire.
couple at the start of the production. You could tell there was love there.
Yeah.
And you felt like they'd worked on the relationship of the two of them together. And I mean, we're talking of two actors that have done a lot of TV, they've done a lot of theatre themselves, and they've done a lot of things, but this is something that can be, it sort of strips them bare in the sense of, didn't get naked, but it strips them bare in the sense of there's nobody else to support them, there's nobody else, it's them two, and that's it, totally reliant. And
it's a different version of a play, that is. That's melons.
Yeah. Aubergines.
Right.
Well, exactly. I just think that
Oh dear, where did we go with that one? Carry on.
It's got to be done. I think the scenes, even though they were very definite, there was no scene changes, as it were, apart from the odd lighting change or the room space changing with the lights on stage in the bookcases and the strips of light around.
Did you say anything came onto the set, like a desk or?
Not really. No, there was no big furniture pieces brought on. All they did was,
so they were just stood about on a rug.
Yeah, but then there was.
Why have the rug at all then?
It was because there was just a black stage, anyway. So it was just to show the sort of centre point of the stage, really. I think that. But the rug was literally, you can just on the image that I'll be putting on social media. Basically, it was just the centre part of the stage. It looks like it's lit, but it's actually a a centre rug.
A centre rug.
And
rather than a rug centre where you go to get all your
the
rugs
big
from.
reveal almost at the end, what you actually end up seeing by the end of the production is
A rug monster?
when the relationship falls to pieces and they start to distance and drift away from each other in a way, what you actually see is that the bookcases actually slowly start to disappear into the fly tower. So they disappear off stage, they all rise out of the way. And what you actually see is...
Well, books contains words and they're not allowed to have all
Definitely,
the words.
but what you also see is in the background, then there's floating objects behind this across right into the distance of the darkness of like their life just literally spread and scattered around behind just before they end the production. So it's just to show that what can happen in this process. So in a way, the production's quite simple in its conception. Because it's one theme, but it's what happens within that. And I think it was directed well, and it was directed in a way that you did focus on them. That you didn't get bored in. There was no scene changes where you were waiting for sound effects or this, that, and the other. They were very quick into the next scenes, but it was done with slight sound effects or slight bits that just took you to that space, or you knew that it was a next scene or another, but it was very much always on, so you knew that they're just moving from one scene to the next, really.
So the transitions were slick.
Yes, definitely.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say, we're
Here for the drama.
So you have discovered... Well, you haven't discovered at all.
No.
Discussed. You have discussed the two leads.
Yeah.
Jenna and Aidan.
Yeah.
What were their performances like?
I thought they were really good, and you could tell they'd committed to the production, and the relationship worked. I do feel that there was a lot of work. They were comfortable in each other's space, and I think that's important for something where it's very exposing for two actors to not have anybody else to rely on apart from each other.
Yeah.
And I think that was important with this production to actually see that, because I think that it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have had the same level of intensity, or you could tell that when they were upset with each other or they were in love with each other, you could see the differences. You could see the moments that they'd worked on together to create that feeling. And I think that was important, because you can live, some people, if they are at a level where they are performers or actors in TV and films and things, that they almost rely on that. And whereas when you do it every night on stage, you've got to keep that level up every time. You've got to hit that mark every time. And I think it's important that they showed this, and that's what I got from this. They were very, very committed.
Well, they're actors, darling.
Well, yes, I know they are, but we have seen other actors who have got high standing not be standing very high at all. So,
do you think they've worked together before?
I'm not sure, to be honest. It gave me the impression that they may have crossed paths at points, and even if it might have been in the rehearsal room floors, or they know each other outside of this, it wouldn't surprise me.
Rehearsal room floors?
Well,
That's a bit dodgy.
Doesn't it?
Yeah. If you happen to know if they've worked together before, drop us a comment.
Yeah, definitely.
Let us know, because I'm all agog. Quite often we forget about the costumes.
Yeah.
Now, because you've seen it and I haven't, is it set in the present day or future? So what would the
I'd say set
like?
more present day, as in it was, I think, from recollection. To be fair, it's very much a comfortable production in the sense of costume. It was
slippers and dressing gown.
Well, they were in socks for the whole production. There was no shoes.
The rug. I was going to ask
so,
that with the rug being on. Did they have any
so it was almost, if you'd
watched...
Oh,
so was she working from home then, this solicitor then?
Generally.
Was everyone locked down?
Generally, but she'd never really... She talked about when she'd been to court, but you never saw her leave to court, because it was always in the home space that they were discussing these things.
So not only were the speech restricted, their movement was as well.
Yes.
So everyone's just staying in their little pod.
Apart from when you saw them dip away, where they did the scenes where they first met at other locations, where they were just reenacting it. Yeah, but they weren't actually. There were only little short scenes where they were talking about their relationship and how it formed or whatever. They'd replay that part of them meeting and things like that. But it was nothing big where it was a definite different location up in the sense of, you know.
Did they have shoes on when they replayed those scenes?
They were just doing it in the same setting. So
What about the props? It wasn't many.
they didn't really use a
No.
lot of props. They used the odd thing on stage, as in they'd use a few items that were close to them, but other than that, everything else was pretty much left. They just did it with physical movements rather than.
I must admit, it seems quite intriguing to have a play last for an hour and a half with no interval, with just 2 actors, and to literally have next to no set or props and be very minimalist, yet have quite a pictorial background.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that
So that'd be interesting to go and see.
There was
if it
quite a
does
lot of
talk.
confidence within it as a production because
It sounds it.
it's a risk, because if they don't use all those things, can it stand up on its own, and can it be a production, and can people watch it?
Do you think that's why it was given the extravagant title?
Potentially.
Because it's eye-catching, isn't it?
Yeah.
In a way, it's like, well, why so many lemons? Is it
Well,
sour?
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
You know, you're intrigued as to why it is called that.
And I think as a new piece of writing, it's actually quite confident to do it as a one-act piece, because initially when I sat there, I didn't actually realise it was a one-act piece until I got in there. And I was like, oh, okay. So
Where the ice creams?
Yeah, well, yeah. no mid-show prosecco.
No
you
Haagen Dazs.
Exactly. Other ice creams are available. But I just think, you know, there's times when as a production you've got to make it a confident piece, and I think that's what this was. And I think that, you know,
that was all down to the actors.
Yeah,
as
and
well.
I can see that some may think it's a little bit of a Marmite production, in the sense of if you don't go along with it and get the premise of it, it may baffle, or you might not get it the same than other people.
Well, maybe if people were concentrating, they'd understand it.
Exactly, yeah.
Moving on to our next segment, as we say,
What the Tech Is This?
Go on then, Richard. Talk about the technical aspects of this production. I want to know, did anything go wrong? Did anything inspire you?
Nothing went wrong.
Oh. Okay, great.
But from the inspirational point of view, I did like the cleanness of the production, in the sense of the lighting and the sound. As in, I did like the space changing lights around the bookcases, because you didn't see that when you walked in. You didn't see any hint of that.
Space changing lights.
Yeah, so like the edges of the bookcases became different room sizes and different room shapes. So you almost felt like the walls were falling
And
in
that
on you.
was done by
because,
LED lights.
yeah, so it's within the bookcases and the edges of the bookcases and the shelves, they'd all got LED strips hidden within the actual bookcases. So so you felt like the room size was changing, because what would happen is most of the bookcases would dim, and you'd just be left with a portion of the actual bookcase to show we're in that area, or that's the bit we're doing, or that's the next part. Or so it was quite clever in its concept. So basically you felt like you were moving around, even though the set was fixed. It felt like, you know, and even losing the where they were losing the characters, or they were coming to their limits, the lights would go up almost like
A barometer?
a bit like a barometer, but also like the sound bars on a music desk, where you see them going up and down. It was that sort of feeling. So
I can see them go up and down here.
yeah, it's because I'm talking too much. Yeah, I'm not talking too loud, but yeah. So it had that feeling of, it was subtle, but it just worked, I think, and that was the key thing. It didn't detract from the production.
I suppose those the lighting that go up in notches, that also indicates tension and panic. You know, how much is left.
Yeah,
like a battery bar.
Yeah.
In a way.
and almost like there was, if I remember right, there was a scene where from right at the top of the bookcases, the base line of the line of the LEDs kept moving down. As that piece was happening, and you felt like the ceiling was caving in, almost like the pressure was getting intense. And I think
A bit like Pointless.
yeah, it felt like that sort of level of like there's a lot of weight on their shoulders, and I think that helped. You know, it helped progress the production and make you feel like you were with it visually.
Seems as though it was utilised.
Yeah.
To give a time frame.
Yes. Yeah,
As
definitely.
well,
It was.
to make things tighter and urgency. And,
Yes.
And the pressure is on.
Yeah, and
That's what it's coming across as.
Yeah, and that's really useful with something like this. So yeah, I just thought it was done really well. It wasn't nothing was thrown away. I didn't feel like any technical elements were thrown away.
And now it's time for
Rewind, Rewatch.
So which part of this play would you see again?
I think because of the language and the performance as a whole, I'd actually watch it again as a whole, because it was hard to pick out a certain scene.
A whole
a whole lemon, not half a lemon. I think this would be a production that you'd watch again and take other parts from it, because there was so much to take in watching it once that watching it again I think would help.
Yeah. Moving on to our final segment, as we say, call this a show. So to summarise then, Richard, on Lemons, what did you think of it overall, now you've been and seen?
I really enjoyed it, and I would encourage anybody who values theatre and different types of theatre to go and watch it.
Go and wash it.
Watch
that lemon.
Watch that lemon good.
Wash that lemon good. That dirty lemon.
Dirty lemon.
I'll gladly go and see it. When can I expect the ticket to come through my post?
It's on in Manchester at the moment.
Is it?
Yeah, it's moved. It's now on in Manchester.
I bet it's due up soon. But
it's touring.
Oh,
a select run.
We'll go and see it, and then we'll discuss it again. So, Richard, out on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being a lovely lemon pie and 1 being a sour lemon, what's it going to be?
I would give this an 8 out of 10, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
So, what sound effect will you be choosing from the following? A complete train wreck? Tumbleweed? An audible shrug of the shoulders? A slow clap? A pleasant applause? Or a standing ovation? What will it be?
I give it a standing ovation because it was a lot of hard work and it worked really well.
So there we are. That's our discussion, or rather, Richard's discussion of Lemons. We hope you found it insightful.
If not, entertaining.
Coming up over the next few episodes, we will be continuing Richard's solo trip to the West End with
Sylvia
and
My Sons Are Queer. If you'd like to get in touch, email us at upstagedownsstagepod@gmail.com. You can always join in the chat to share with us your views of a production.
Also, make sure to follow, share, like and subscribe to all our channels so you get every episode the second it's released. And we hope you join us again for another instalment of
Upstage Downstage.